So, gentlemen, with what we're seeing in the market today, I've got a couple of questions here to get things started. Talk about the next big evolution, right? I would like to get your perspective on some of the experiences that you can relate to digital business, automation, or analytics. Let's start with analytics. Any thoughts on your part?
First, coming to analytics, I think analytics has been a big buzzword, as somebody said when he wrote all the words in the morning by saying we're using it 20 times a day. But if I were to break it up, I would say that we've always done a lot of analytics over the last few years. I would call it descriptive analytics. What happened? So you do all the data, the management reviews, the data that you get is an analysis of what has happened. What happened in the last quarter? How did sales happen? How did marketing happen? And then we said, look, that's what we are doing. Can we do some amount of predictive analytics? Can we predict, what will happen? And this is very important for clients. TJ mentioned insurance as one of them. So one of the things, for example, we are trying to work with an insurance client is can we predict churn rates, particularly in cases like health and auto, which are renewed every year. Persistency is very important. So can you predict, or can you reduce the effort to get the people to stay with you? So that was predictive. I think it's also moved now one step ahead, and what is being called prescriptive analytics, which means that how do you take advantage of what you're predicting? What are the things that you're doing, basis the prediction that you have to ensure that that works in your favor or your client's favor or your business's favor. So I think what you're going to see is that as we go forward, there will be what clients will want from us. The value addition that the clients will want for their customers is can we predict some stuff for them? And more importantly, can we work with them and prescribe and be prescriptive by saying, look, this is what we are predicting. This is how do it. I mean, there are very, very examples. The biggest example I was reading in a Harvard Business School study is shale oil and gas. How do you predict where oil is and what do you need to do to get that out? And that has, as you know, changed the whole ecosystem in oil. So I think that's as far as the journey of analytics is concerned. I'll let Pawan add, and then we'll come back to automation and digital.
So I'll just illustrate what Sandip said with a real-life example that we're currently supporting. Imagine a retailer, and he's got an online facility. He's got a website and various other. You can make mobile inquiries. Plus, you've got access to a whole realm of public data where any particular individual that has visited the website of this particular retailer, you can actually scour the web and determine, actually pick up data as to what interactions that particular individual has had. Whole bunch of data, and imagine the amount of data for one individual and then multiply it by the entire population or a subpopulation of the town in which this retail has an outlet. Analytics in the background is now going to predict what this individual's preferences are. Firstly, what his needs are, and secondly, within a particular category of needs, what are his preferences? What is his profile? You talked about, cool and not cool and traditional or whatever. When he visits the mall in which this retailer has an outlet, there's an alert. Uh-huh. And by the time he gets to the actual shop, there are screens over there that are displaying clothes that analytics has predicted he would like, and we are now prescribing to him, buy it. That's the power of analytics.
In real time.
Real time.
Excuse me. Great examples. What about, let's talk about automation. Any examples where you've seen things that are slightly different or really evolutionary with regards to automation that's being implemented today?
So, TJ, with this topic, the next big evolution, I mean, to me, evolution is evolution. It's not big or small. When it becomes big, it's revolution.
Exactly.
And robotic automation, to me, is actually, I mean, with due respect to robotics practitioners in the audience, it's actually an ongoing evolution. It's just more advanced automation. By itself, it's great to see. It expedites stuff. People take 30 minutes to do something. It gets done in 30 seconds. But to me, the real value is when you marry it with analytics.
Yeah.
And what we've been able to see and do for our clients is not just automate what a human was doing, but actually now, because it's digital, you can apply real-time analytics to either collapse several steps or determine that which of the, I mean, look at it this way. If I've got a series of tasks and one of them is actually a decision point which then leads to 2 or 3 other steps, you can actually perform the analytics right there and drop what are futile steps and just move on to the most productive. As long as you've got a target in terms of I need X output, I used to do it with Y input, I can now do it with 0.4 Y input because I'm extracting the higher yield potential ones and dropping the rest. So a lot of waste is eliminated. So automation by itself is great, but I don't think it's revolutionary, it's evolutionary. Automation married with analytics, that's revolution.
Great point. Now, I think you alluded to the point about digital platforms, the digital aspect of it, and the delivery of real-time services as well. Now, I'm just trying to understand within the context of the Indian-based multinational companies, with regards to all these 3 elements, be it the digital business aspect of it, with the analytics, as well as automation. How do you see, or where do you see the opportunities for the India-based multinationals as we move forward?
Sure.
Sandip, you take the difficult ones.
I'll pass them back to you and TJ. But the digital is another buzzword, but I think it's a very important one. You used 3 words which struck in my mind, which you said digitization, digitalization, and a digital business. I'll give you 2 examples. One is an example where we are actually, you wanted an Indian multinational outlook. One is where we're looking at actually with something with a government. Let's take one very simple example, land records. In India, land records are all over the place. Paper here, paper there. So what do? First, you digitize the land records. Once you've digitized it, you digitalize it, which means you put it on the net, you put it on a place by which people can access. And third is that can you build a business around it? And basically what it is that there could be queries, there could be answers, there could be people which are asking, and then you answer, so you create a service. And to go further, I think TJ was mentioning machine-to-machine calling, and I remember I've spent some years in the US, so if I were to sell a property or I were to buy a property from Pawan or TJ, I'd want to find out, has he paid taxes for the last 4 years? What is the value of the property? And what happens is that when you just key in that, it gets the data from another source, another machine, and you get that. So today in the US, land records, and which is why buying and selling property is so easy, because the whole thing is digitized, digitalized, there's a digital service around it, and there is data that you're pulling from different sources and getting it. I mean, you can just do it on the net. If you've got any friends abroad, you just key his address and you will get everything on his property now as we speak. That's something that we should do in India. Give another small example. We are working with one of our startups and doing a digital customer experience process called Litmus. Essentially, as you know, today if you travel on Jet Airways, they will give you after 2 days a form, or they'll give you a form in the flight, which is a 10-page form, which mostly you never fill, or they will send you after 7 days. Even a company on customer service will send you like Taj, and the answer that you do is less than 1.5%. One of the ways of doing it that we are working is that you go to any shop, you go to Domino's, or you go to Landmark, or you go to Lifestyle, at the POS, the point of sale, depending on your frequent number or when the tiller, you immediately get a hyperlink on your smartphone by saying, great, for visiting this place, we would just like to get your customer experience. And the way this has been designed, it exactly takes 2 minutes. It's just by moving your thumb, like you see, if somebody sees, and then it is it's like a pizza at moving your thumb, like you might say in Changi Airport. So you say +5 to -5. I like the atmosphere, I like the food, I like this. So it's 2 minutes, but if you do a +5 or a -5, it immediately gives in to some things by saying you hated the service. Why? And it's got very nice keyword, ouch, grouch, etc. You don't have to type anything, it's very simple. And you get an instant customer experience, and you get an instant reply. So if you say this was terrible, the service, they can by saying, okay, this is what we are doing. Number one. Number two, the way this has now been progressing is obviously we want more and more people to fill it up. That 1% response, we want 40, 50, 60% response. Now, because it's on the mobile phone, and now because you can track, and most of these places are in a mall, so somebody's come out from Landmark, and what we say is that, look, please fill this up, it's great, and it's fine. And by the way, there's a 50% off on Starbucks, because Starbucks is 20 feet down the road, and we know it. So we know that you go to Starbucks, you get a 50% off, and you fill it. And the response rates we are getting is close to 50, 60%, as opposed to a 1% that a Taj and a Jet used to get earlier. So one of our sister companies and our parent company is called the Mobile Store. They have 600, 700 mobile stores. And what the CEO does is that he looks at this every Tuesday, and he determines which store is doing well, which store is doing badly. He gets real-time data, and the customer is getting a real-time feedback. So that's how you can use this whole system. So you're just transforming this entire exercise of customer service.
No, that's great examples there. I think the Changi Airport example is great. I was there, I lived there for 12 years. And one of the things that I realized also is the fact that they actually in real time monitor the cleanliness of the different parts of the airport, including the toilets. So if there is a drop in the average score within the SLAs, within I think 5 minutes, the supervisor has to get to that. So that's why you see it so clean. So bear in mind there's a lot of intelligence being built into it. Pawan, any thoughts on that front with regards to the opportunities for multinationals in the Indian?
I can't beat what Sandip said.
Well said. Great. So I think, shall we open it up to the audience to see if there are any specific thoughts, examples that you may have, or questions that you may have? Any statements or anything? Audience? Going once? Twice? Nope?
TJ, I want to add something, and maybe the audience can react. You talked about analytics, and Pawan mentioned analytics. One of the things, and this we've learned really with interaction with clients, is can we do what is being called, and we are calling the same term, customer journey analytics. Don't look at individual touch point and do the analysis of that, but do this for the entire customer journey, end to end. So whether it is, for example, a credit card, which has 9 or 10 steps, it takes a few days till the first bill, or it is somebody traveling on an aeroplane right from the time he leaves the house to when he reaches his destination. So, and in the past, we've treated analytics as very discrete. So obviously, there's a bunch of call center analytics that we have, but what about all the steps, and can we treat that as one? And there is a leading airline which is looking at this whole analytics not from a discrete interval, not from silos, but customer journey end to end, which is a defining point, cross-functional, and therefore, some of these airlines, like the Middle East Airlines, are providing you a great car to go from your house to the airport. Why are they doing that? They're saying, my aeroplane may be very good, but what about the entire customer journey? So if he's going in a lousy cab from his house to the airport, and which is why Etihad or Emirates says we'll provide them a Mercedes from the house. So what they're looking at, and they were telling me, so even in airports, some of the airports are not great. They said we want to keep our counter, or the place where you're coming to get the tickets from us, with a nice carpet, very nice chairs. Because we are not looking at discrete journeys, we're looking at it end to end, right from the car from your house to the airport. It may not be the great airport, but where my ticketing is great, my lounge is obviously great, my airline is good, my entertainment in the airline is good. And then they look at the analytics, and they said, look, if we had done it discreetly, there's a lot of drop. But if we look at it in one go, TJ, then the experience is much better, and they've done some correlation analysis. That's one of the things that we are learning from clients and working on that.
Great. Another great example there. Sorry, we've got a question. That's okay. The two. So first and then second. Yeah. Please, ma'am.
My name is Uma Ganesh. I run a skills company, Global Talent Track. This question is actually for Sandip. You run a very large BPM organization where talent is absolutely critical and you have a very large number of resources within the organization. You spoke very beautifully about customer experience, customer's journey in terms of their experience. I would like to understand about the employee journey experience. Is there something that Aegis has done that you would like to share with us?
I think it's a great question. I'll just give one example. Aegis also is very large in the domestic business in India. And therefore, we have a lot of requirements. Currently, we're working for and everybody knows that, very new and very large telecom provider, which needs thousands of people. So we typically, on a particular day, may have more than 1,500 people coming to the office. Just that first day when the guy is coming, initially, in the early years, we never tracked. And we realized that there is somebody who's waiting 3 to 4 hours before he even gets that, that first interview, and then it's a series of steps. And I was there maybe about a year back or a year and a half back, and I was coming to the office, and there was a gentleman there, and there was a small hullabaloo, and I found out these are two people who had come, and I think they were well qualified. They had come from another BPO. They had to wait the whole day to get all this thing.
From BPM industry's perspective, that how do you see robotics automation happening in the BPM industry? Is it going to be an exponential adoption suddenly? Do you see that as a threat to your contracts, which could be still FTE based? What is your overall perspective on the adoption of automation or robotics in the BPM industry?
Can I maybe give you the perspective that we have from an industry, and then I would love to get their views as well. So one of the things is that we expect about 40%. This is a prediction that we are coming out with, which actually we have to a certain extent come out with. 40% of engagements around automation will fail over the next couple of years because the focus is purely on labor reduction. The focus should be more on business outcomes. So when, at the get-go, you start thinking about, I'm going to take these bots and reduce so many people, you're not really doing justice to the outcome that you're after. The other thing is that the notion that, we're going to replace a third of the population, agent population, with technology, with virtual agents and so on, bots included, right? What it does is it allows us to free up talent that may have to be reskilled or continuously improve themselves for other aspects of the business. So, and I think, if you think about the value chain of services, the low-hanging fruit, some of the less complex issues, that we can naturally shift out towards an automated function and focus more on the high value work. But again, that's a position that we've had, but I would like to get your views as well.
I think, TJ, you're absolutely right. We've also got to be a little careful here when we talk about BPM companies. I'm reasonably familiar with the industry, very familiar with one company. And in terms of FTE models, in terms of the type of work that is exposed to robotics, in our aggregate revenues, that's about 50%. When you do a diagnostic across that and determine within that what are the types of processes that are repetitive, et cetera, routine, can be roboticized today, obviously in the future it'll be more as the bots become cognitive and all of that. It's a certain percentage. We are looking at client relationships, and I think this is true for the entire industry, or certainly the large players. And we end up doing, robotics is just one avenue of adding value. If in fact it adds value, we will do it, even if it cannibalizes our revenue, not for altruistic reasons, because in our experience, when we have long-term relationships, clients value partners that actually go out on a limb in their interest, and they reward them, not immediately, but whenever the opportunity arises. So if I were to track our client relationships over the last 5 years, the growth has always come as the difference between new work that we've taken on minus some stuff that we've cannibalized. And that's exactly the way that one needs to proceed, because if there is a robotic opportunity, if you were to neglect it in the interest of saving FTE, you run the risk of losing the entire relationship. Sandip?
Absolutely. And just to add to both what Pawan and TJ, let me give you a specific example. So we work for one of the very large travel e-commerce companies. Today, as customers, all of us are using the net to buy tickets, to sell tickets. A lot of that initial work is also getting automated. So what's happening is that we've trained our agents to do a little more complex work. And we are getting that complex work which this client had it itself. So this client has a separate company which is for corporate clients. So for example, it's like a competitor to American Express Travel. If I'm a corporate client, or Pawan is a corporate client, and he's going to 9 countries, and he's changing his plan because of some emergency, the complexity is very huge because he's got to change every leg he's got to take, he's got his favorite hotels, he's got his airlines, he wants to stay 2 kilometers from the meetings that he's going to have. Those are very complex work. And our agents, which were doing much simpler work, yes sir, I will give, which hotel do you want? You want Hilton Orlando? Done. Or you want Starwood here, is done, is now doing this very complex work of doing his travel schedule, which earlier the American Express TRS or Carlson Radisson has done, but now our agents are doing. So yes, so to answer your question, yes, there is automation, and if you don't provide it, one is clients will not reward you. If you do work with them, they will give you more work as we are doing. And if you don't do it and somebody else does it, then you stand the chance of losing the business. You don't want to be Uberized, as in the taxi cases. I'll just end by saying, to only TJ's point, that finally it's the outcome. So this whole automation thing has become a big hoa, as they say in English, in Hindi. It's not that everything is getting automated. It is automation, which is a certain percentage. And our business is more customer interaction, so automation is even less than Pawan's. But we have to embrace what can be done, because others will do it, or you want to maintain the relationship, but you can always train your agents to do much more complex work. But what other companies are also doing and what we are doing is automation itself is not the panacea. TJ called about the outcome. It is automation with some amount of machine learning where you iterate and give predictions. I mean, what does Amazon do when it says that do you want A, B, and C? And they're so right. It is not just automation. It is machine learning. It is thinking. The Uber car, just read a main article as this one in Philadelphia. There is a lot of machine learning. It's not just plain automation. So look at the outcome and not just the labor reduction. But I think people like us and Pawan's company are now doing much more complex work. So you gain some, you lose some, but the industry is moving up the value chain.
Great. Question at the back. Gentleman at the back. If you could introduce yourself. Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, we heard it.
Go ahead.
Kind of change is very important, or when is it going to come if all these kind of innovations need to happen in the BPM space?
You want to say something?
Okay. Go ahead first.
Sure. So it's happening. It started. To TJ's point about be the process, be the business, you do need to be the business now. And when you translate that into what it practically means, in the old days, the degrees of freedom that you operated in were limited to 1 or 2. All the parameters are specified by the client, and you basically had flexibility to operate. in one dimension. Do it. Today, those degrees of freedom have expanded. And it's now, you specify, help me figure out what my process should look like. So we're almost coming at it outside in now. You had the term design thinking there. It's, again, a buzzword, much used, little understood. The whole idea there is redesign process outside in, bottoms up. And what that's forcing BPM providers to do is expand the nature of skills that they have at their disposal. So today, I mean, we all talked about domain expertise. I mean, in the past, I think when I look back, it was probably misused. All it meant was that I was very good at doing something that I was told to do in a particular industry, and I did more and more of it. Today, I actually need to understand the dynamics of the entire industry, both existing legacy as well as the threat that the disruptive companies are posing. And so I need industry experts, I need industry practitioners, I need design thinking practitioners. I've got a whole suite of levers that are available to me, digital, mobile, whatever. I don't have to be an expert in that. I can buy it, I can partner. But I need to be able to put it all together. So in the old days, it's almost like earlier the client gave you a car and said, fill the petrol. Today he says, transport me. And I need to figure out whether I build the car or hire it or what I do. So to your question, sir, yes, your prognosis is exactly right. And I think we're all being forced to move in that direction. And it's actually not a bad direction to move in. To Sandip's earlier point, it's basically enhancing the stature, complexity, caliber of our people. We are just doing more value-add work.
And just before TJ adds, just to say, absolutely agree with Pawan. So the short answer is yes. But I just want to add one perspective. A lot of pricing in the olden days and even today is FT-based pricing. We've been hearing a lot on outcome-based. Some of that didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is the clients were very prescriptive, that you do A, B, and C. Now, if I've got to do A, B, and C, then I can't do an outcome because you're not allowing me to do D and E. Today, and that is to your point, disruptive companies are saying, boss, we are going to, there's a very large e-commerce company who says, look, I will pay you only on solutions. By solutions, they mean outcome. However, we are going to give you freedom to do B, C, D, and E. So as long as the old world companies were all saying, we want to shift from FT to outcome, but please still do what we are saying, you manage just this front end, we'll do everything else, it was not possible, and which is why that movement was not happening. But a lot of disruptive companies are going the other way around. I think Pawan used the word redesign by saying, fine, let's redesign the whole process. We want to pay you on solutions, we'll redesign the process, we'll give you that freedom. And absolutely, I think that's a good way. Not just it moves up the value chain. If we do it well, you can make far more money than you were doing on an FT business.
Yeah, and just want to add, I think that's one of the reasons why we are seeing a lot more POCs or proof of concepts come out today, where the client wants to also mitigate to a certain extent the risk associated with a big bang approach. So, and the business units are the ones that are driving this for various reasons, time to market and so on. So these proof of concepts will also give you as a service provider the degree of visibility into some of the risks associated with such a model. So and then once it's stabilized, then you go mainstream. So it's pretty much the bimodal approach that Gartner advocates, mode 1 and mode 2. I think that is interesting as an approach, but also bear in mind that this entire digital services approach coupled with analytics, advanced analytics, automation and all, is actually driving a lot of these companies to move in that direction. So if you think about the digital disruptive companies that are now really taking shape around the world, they don't think about building their captives or having an army of people providing customer service or other support services. What they're doing is they're thinking about who can I work with, who can I partner, who can step up to the plate and help me design and build this. But the good thing is when they get funded, you get funded. So That's one
They
approach.
operate on asset-light models.
Exactly, exactly. Right, I guess we have some time for a last question if there is any. Oh, gentleman over here.
Hi, I'm Nitesh Rungta from Jardine Lloyd Thompson. So I have a question around a problem which I think is quite typical. Basically, when companies grow, and especially which have been around for a large number of years, many decades at times, they go through a technology transformation process. And what happens as an outcome is that a large amount of data sits across different systems, and it's not always standard. So when we deploy something like robotics or the automation we're talking about, it heavily relies on picking up data in an accurate manner and then processing it. And that is the general challenge when we go through that kind of journey. So that's something which my organization is also doing right now. We've got a robotics team, and we are playing with that technology. So my question is really how should the management balance investment versus break even and expectation on returns in such an environment?
Well, first of all, I think I'll just give you a bit of view that the position that we've had in the market now. Obviously, when you look at master data management as one example, that's a major issue for a number of clients, end user clients. They've not really invested enough because they've very much been built based on the traditional model, and companies have grown through acquisition or over the years, right? So they've got all this information and data residing everywhere. And I believe garbage in, garbage out, right? So master data management in itself is an opportunity for the industry. That is why you'll notice that a lot of the business process services companies today are also building their capabilities in helping clients move and address that particular issue. Now, a lot of these cases today, clients have embarked on MDM type projects as well. And I think you need to address that separately. So you have a business issue, you want to address a business process, but obviously if you don't get your plumbings in order, you're not going to get the house there ready for it. So these are quite significant issues in the industry. So the role of IT services within the business process services space also is quite significant. In fact, we feel that in about 2/3 of engagements, the discussion gradually also moves towards understanding what the MDM portion is, and gradually you start seeing new opportunities come out. So in that sense, it's not just providing the business process element, but also looking at the MDM component. So it's another line of business for us as well. Great. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to the panelists again, and have a great day. Take care.